early on in this project, I really wanted to find a poem. I think words speak so strongly, and wanted to find a poem to sort of set the stage of the show. And after a lot of searching, Nina was able to find a poem by Lena Kostenko, who is sort of a poet laureate of Ukraine. She's 94 years old. Just last month, she was awarded an honorary Citizen of Kyiv award in Ukraine. And we found this amazing poem by her, worked on translating it, and she's given us full rights to use that poem. And I'm just going to start this by reading that poem in case you haven't had a chance to read it yet. A little longer, and cherry blossoms will bloom. Alighting petals, the dreams of unearthed roots. War paints watercolors with blood. Its palette, the ashes of fires. Its landscape, the ruins of buildings. Empty streets as faded pastels. Perhaps somewhere, amidst cries from the rubble, a tulip will suddenly sprout. So first, a lot of people have asked, well, how did this come to be? And the first person on our panel, Sasha Samuels, I'm going to point at her because it was her who brought this idea. She was visiting here with her partner, David. I gave them a tour of the museum. And so it was Sasha who eventually brought this project to us. And so, Sasha, I'd like to start with just asking you about that. What was sort of the beginning of this project, and what made you think that Moifa would be the perfect place for this project?
Well, when the big war started, because the invasion we know happened in 2014 with Crimea being taken over by invaders, I was really following the news about Ukraine, and it was just very heartbreaking. And I started donating a percentage of my sales to World Central Kitchen. And that just didn't feel like quite enough. And then at a certain point, there was a tipping point where I was getting certain information that was just becoming very, very personal. And I made the decision to go to Ukraine. And I had visited the museum, as we talked about. And I went originally to paint soldiers who were in recovery at Unbroken and Superhumans in Lviv. And while I was there, I met people who introduced me to artists, and I wound up going to art exhibitions. I met Marta Sirko, the photographer, who created this beautiful collection specifically for this exhibition. And I started seeing all these objects made from empty artillery shells and missile casings and rocket launchers. And it was extraordinary because not all the people that were working with this material were professional artists. There were just civilians doing it. And I thought, oh God, this is contemporary folk art that's unfolding before my eyes. And so I started sending images to Laura and said, you really ought to think about maybe doing a show of this because I don't know anybody else in the United States who's doing this. And so when I came back into America, I approached Laura, and she and Charlie and I did a Zoom, and we talked about it, and it came to be. It's pretty amazing. And my understanding is to create an exhibition of this complexity might take 2 to 3 years. I mean, getting these objects out internationally is already a challenge. Getting them out of a war zone, can't even tell you what that was like. And thankfully, Nina here really orchestrated the actual movement of getting the objects out and to America.
Great, thank you. Which brings us to Nina. I can honestly say this project would not have happened, especially in the form that it has taken, this glorious form that it's taken, without her amazing support and work on getting this out. It was really, I have to tell the story of how this all came to be. When after this project first started, I was talking with Kate McCune, who's our director of collections, and she said, hey, Laura, you know what? We have a new intern starting in collections, and she was born in Ukraine. She speaks Ukrainian. You should talk to her and see. And of course, I reached out to Nina, and we met, and immediately she just became such an integral part of this project. And without her tenacity and her work ethic to make this possible. It really would not have taken form as you see it. So first of all, just a personal gratitude, Nina, for your amazing work. I'd like to start also then by asking you about the process of getting some of these. We've talked now about the difficulty of getting objects from a war zone, from Ukraine. Can you tell us maybe one or two stories about how you got that art here?
Absolutely. So getting objects out of a war zone is precarious. Getting objects created out of ammunition casings and missile debris really ups the ante to like a whole other stratosphere. So it took a lot of moving pieces and a maze of people to get all of the objects we wanted to, every single one here successfully. The first step we took was we crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's. We got a non-explosive certification for every single object that you see in that room. It's a special department of the Ukrainian police whose actual job is to go to sites after they've been struck, to go into demine areas, to respond to air raids. And they were kind enough in their downtime to examine these art pieces and confirm for us that they are indeed non-explosive and that they are indeed safe to travel. And also we got permission from the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture. We got permission to ship these objects just as pieces of art, to have them handed over into our care. But that was not the end of the story. Each object that you see in the gallery really took a very unique route, really has its own carved out path just of getting here. There's a whole story behind the story of just how the objects were made, where they came from. There's also how they came here. I'll talk about two pieces in particular. The first is Yaroslava Tkachuk's woven painting, Zhimka, Woman. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't yet been to the gallery, please go check it out after this panel. If you have seen it, you will have noticed that there's about 200 ammunition casings on the painting. And we just couldn't do it. This is the last object that got here. We couldn't ship it out. And I started getting this idea, well, what if Yaroslava could somehow unglue the casings and then ship the painting here without them, and then come here and then reattach them? And I was like, no, I can't suggest this to her. I can't have her tamper with her work of art. And lo and behold, I get a message from her one morning, and she's like, Nina, I'm going to take a hairdryer and an iron. I'm going to go at it from both sides, melt the glue, take the casings off, take off the mask to be super safe, and ship it. How do you feel about that? I was like, yes, brilliant idea. And so that's what she did. She unglued all 200-ish casings, took off the mask that's protruding just to make it as simple as possible of a shipment. And the painting got here about 2 weeks ago. Yaroslava got here on Monday. Yaroslava traveled. She had about a 40-hour travel day. One of the reasons it's so hard to get objects here from Ukraine is that there are no planes flying out of Ukraine. It's a war zone. You can't fly out of there. So as difficult as it is to get objects out, it's also difficult for people to travel. She had to take a bus from Lviv in western Ukraine to Warsaw, Poland, a plane from Warsaw to Amsterdam, a plane from Amsterdam to Minneapolis, a plane from Minneapolis to Albuquerque, and there we met each other at midnight in the Albuquerque airport. She's here now. Never-ending day. And meanwhile, we ordered ammunition casings from a U.S. reloading company in Florida. Thank you, Florida. And when we ordered 400 just to be super safe. And when they arrived, they were very clean, very shiny, very pristine casings. I took some photos, sent them to Yaroslava, and we were like, this is just not going to work. Like, these cases have not had a life in Ukraine. And so we got some ammonia, we got some vinegar, and on Yaroslava's first day in Santa Fe, New Mexico, she baked what I called a poisonous pie with some ammunition casings, ammonia, and vinegar, a very special combination of those ingredients. And when you look at the painting, you will see this very natural patina that she created. So there will be an echo of the original casings that she worked with in Ukraine. And then the following day, we documented how she reassembled her painting, how she sewed the mask back on, how she reattached all 200 casings, and now it's here for your eyes for 10 months in Santa Fe.
That's a great segue. Yaroslava, Tkachuk, let's go to the next question. And let's talk about that work of art that's such a prominent piece in the exhibition. And you also notice it became a prominent piece that a lot of the PR about this exhibition picked up. So you'll see her work reproduced often in a lot of the press about this exhibition. Yaroslava, first, can you just tell us a little about yourself, where in Ukraine that you came from, and tell us about that part of Ukraine?
Nice to meet you all. And I came from Lviv. And this is a western part of Ukraine. It's nearby a European border, and it's more safely placed in this part of Ukraine. But when I come in, then the next day my town was bombed again, and it was another civilian object, and I was so worried about it, but also okay with my family, and so such life in Ukraine now.
And then can you tell us about this piece, Woman, the inspiration behind it, and maybe some of the symbolism? I know there's a lot of different aspects to it, about the symbolism of the mask and of the figure of the woman as well.
Okay, you know, I'm an artist that I can't immediately react to what happened around. I must think about it. I must interpret it, and exactly in that artwork, I think about my country as a, you know, Ukraine is a young country, but we have an ancient and old history. That's why I draw a young woman in traditional clothes with flowers in her hair, with stripes, with some embroidered elements on her clothes. It's the symbol like my country. We are young, but we have a history. We have our background. Yeah, that's why. So about mask, the mask, you know, when we take a mask, it's not our face. It's like a protection. It's like a protection, you know. It's and she wears this mask like a protection of the enemy. The samely is a shield of cases. So it's the meaning of my artwork, some symbols. Okay. And the embroidery is an element of embroidery from traditional clothes, and I also use it in my artwork. Okay.
A follow-up question to that: where did you find or source those original casings that you then removed before it was shipped here?
You know, in my artwork, I also have a mixed textile and metal. And my nephew, he's a professional soldier, and once he told me, "Oh, you know, I have a lot of cases. Do you want it? Maybe you can use it in your artwork." So he brought it to me, and in that time when I create this artwork, I think about the shield, and I think about metal pieces, and I have a cases, and it's have a good sense for exactly for this artwork, and so it's happened.
Yaroslava has a lot of textile work using metal work. So she combined these two techniques. It's very unique.
Great.
Thank you, Serhii.
Yes. Yes. Well, Serhii, you're the next question. It's a good lead-in.
But I'm
Fantastic.
not textile master. That's why I am talking about metal, because I love
Fantastic.
Yaroslava works.
Great. Well, to begin, can you give us a little bit of background of yourself? Where in Ukraine are you from? Where
Yes.
you are currently, and what brought you there?
Yeah, I'm also from the western part of Ukraine. This is like a neighbor city. Yaroslava lives in Lviv, and I lived in Ivano-Frankivsk. This is the old territory called Galiciana, named by the ancient town Galich. So it's like a part of Ukraine, because Ukraine is a big country and consists with different regions. So I came here in 2022, in September, after invitation from the friend of us. She lives in New York City, and she suggested us just to come to the safe place when the war started. We were not ready to do this, even did not think about it, because we started to help our army. So in that period, the whole country, it's not a good word, not exactly word divided, but somehow some part of the people started to be soldiers, and another part to help them. So we started to do that in different ways, because on the first few weeks when started this big war, everybody was shocked, and we just united to make something to keep us alive and to against the aggressors somehow. And some words about me, because I am a blacksmith and I devote all my life do blacksmithing thing. And we organized during 20 years in our city the International Blacksmith Festival. So we were known in the blacksmith world, so we asked all blacksmiths around the world to help us, because we need some material. We started to do these mufflers for the guns in our shop, and we need some tubes, which we could not find in our city, in Ukraine at that time. So all blacksmiths responded and started to send us money. We started somehow produce these mufflers, and then another blacksmith from the Kyiv region, this is central part of Ukraine, he in that period already has been a volunteer since 2014, when the war started in Ukraine. And he said us, bring the special car, a four-wheels car. We need it for the front line for our friends. And we used this money, what collected from different countries, from different blacksmiths, and we bought the first car and delivered to the front line. That's how the new community, blacksmith community, formed, and we registered this organization called Blacksmiths Without Borders. Yeah. And now, in this moment, we somehow brought to front line about 70 cars. Yeah. And we discussed with this man, his name is Yuri Virodov. He's a very good blacksmith and artist. And he said, if you have chance, go to the United States, go and try to help more. That's why we're here now.
Great. We're really happy that you are here, and your work, 3 of your works are in the exhibition, and they really stand out. I'd like to ask you about one of them in particular, and that is one which you have taken the name from Lena Kostenko's poem, Amidst Cries from the Rubble, which includes a piece of a Russian missile. Can you tell us a little about the history of that piece of missile and about that work, please?
Yeah, it's like a continue this story about our friends, our blacksmith community. This man who now is our general, who takes all car and brings to the front line. Actually, we got this piece from him. It's also the sad story because he found this piece of Russian missiles after the bombing, and some people were killed from these military units which we are helping. And before that, we got a request from the blacksmiths from Europe. They asked us to make objects what we can sell in Europe to help Ukrainian army, because it's also the interesting story about blacksmiths in Europe, how they try to collect money for buy these cars. It's very different direction how to do this. So some of them just go to the supermarket, show people on the telephone some pictures about the war and ask, give us money. Another one organized the exhibition in trying to sell objects. Another trying to make like auctions, so different in many ways to help people. And they asked, make something from the stuff of, how to say this?
The debris. The debris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I called my friend, also blacksmith, who are soldiers, who is soldier, and he sent me 6 big sacks of this stuff. So we started with the casing because it's like small things, and create these sunflowers. But unfortunately, there was no chance to send it to the Europe and sell. We took with us to United States. And we made the exhibition and already sell several of these sunflowers and sent all money to the Norway, where we registered this organization, Blacksmiths Without Border, and bought a car. So this is the story about this new for us things, because on the beginning I even didn't think about possibility of making something from these things which brought death. But I had a conversation with the woman who originally from Arizona, and she made a lot of master classes of acupuncture in Ukraine and helped a lot of soldiers with this technique. And we started to discuss in Ukraine about how to make things from casings, from death objects. And she pushed me and said, you have the energy to transform it. So that's why I started I did not think even touch it. I didn't like it. But somehow we started to do this. And maybe it's like we have to do this to transform this negative energy. That's why another object, these eggs, I got this idea here in the United States to put casings to the eggs and, how to say, smash it, press it. So destroy it and make a form of life, transform it.
Beautiful.
And thanks for you, because you inspired me.
Great, great, that's wonderful. Well, one of your pieces, the Amidst Cries from the Rubble.
I
is
forgot about this, yes.
Yeah, well, can you just quick tell us about that piece, in using that Russian missile missile fragment for that piece?
Yuri brought us this piece from Frontline, and he actually already saw in this piece the beauty shape. It's formed by explosion. And looks like a flower. That's why we decided to use this like an illustration of this great poetry. And I started with the base, reminds me the Gunn, which transformed to the something viable.
Fertile.
Yeah, floral.
Well, that's
Something like this. It's not. It's not simple to explain this, because it comes not like conscious. I didn't conscious about this stuff. It came from like a spirit from the.
Great.
Yeah.
It's a really amazing piece, and if anyone has been into the gallery, you'll see that it forms the center of almost which we created, the designer, Lila, what you created is almost like an altar. And around that altar, you'll see a lot of painted shell casings and shell containers. And one thing that we wanted to bring to this is that this affects everyone in Ukraine, from the youngest children to elderly. And some of the youngest pieces of the exhibition are created by the youngest people, are from 10, 11 years old, in these casings. And they came from an art therapist, Christina Volko. And I'd like to ask now Sasha. Sasha was very instrumental in making that connection and working with Christina to get these objects here to sort of form this altarpiece around Serhii's piece. Sasha, can you tell us a little bit about that, about how you came to the work of Christina Volko and the importance of that and the importance of having these artwork by these children?
Oh yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, much like your painting that came through that had to go all through these checks and balances. So I was put in touch with Christina by a friend of a friend of a friend. So I sort of came out of the blue and emailed her and said, hey, I've seen the work that you've done with these children. She was doing art therapy mostly with individuals with special needs, so on the autism spectrum, children with ADHD. That was really what she did, and it was volunteer work. She would buy the materials, she would set up the studio, and she would just help people out. And then when the big war happened, a lot of children lost their families. A lot of children saw their parents die in missile fire. So all those objects in that kind of altar space on the wall, every person who made those saw missile fire, every single one. They're all children except for one. And she is a woman of about 40 years old. She was painting this ammunition case while the missiles were landing in her town. And that's how she was coping, that's how she was managing. And before I reached out to Christina, I found out that somebody from New York had approached her and said, oh, I see this work you're doing, especially with these children. I'd like to buy these objects, give each child $10 US, bring them to New York and auction them off and raise all this money to support, rehabilitation efforts in Ukraine. So she agreed, got all these objects to New York, and then he stole them all. Stole them all. So when I approached her, hey, we'd like to get these objects, she was, very cautious. And I had to convince her, no, this museum is legitimate, I'm friends with this person, I've been in Lviv. And so she said, well, we don't have any objects, they were all taken. And I said, well, can you get more? So we waited for a couple months, and a shipment came in from the front lines. And they were going to paint them, but then there was a holiday, and then they started painting them, and then some children got sick. So it was, again, it seemed like an impossible task to get these objects out. And then finally, my understanding is that they all got, certified, everything was correct. And then when it came to shipping, there was, the one person who's going to just ruin your day and make it really hard to get these objects out. And my understanding is you had to deal with that person, and that person said, well, I'm going to call my supervisor, and you said, okay, and the supervisor said, everything looks good, you have to ship them. So we got them all.
That's great. So Nina, this brings up another story. Can you give us another, like you said, a lot of these objects ended up taking up a life of their own just to get them here. Is there another story of some other objects that kind of took on a life of their own as they made their way here to Santa Fe?
Yeah, there's plenty of stories. Another one I'll speak to, so Yaroslava actually, in addition to her own artwork, she helped us coordinate in Lviv shipments of a couple other artworks, including these 12 shell casings. The other set of works that she helped us get here are by an artist named Oksana Doroshenko, who's in Kherson. Kherson is a city in eastern Ukraine, and if you're familiar at all with the current conflict, eastern Ukraine is getting hit the hardest. Kherson was occupied by Russian forces in 2022, and when it was liberated, a couple months later, Oksana decided to stay there. Unfortunately, it continues to be one of the hardest hit cities in Ukraine. Much of Kherson has been leveled to the ground. Oksana's children, 2 daughters, they're not able to go to school. If you've gone through the exhibit, you'll see her daughter standing in a little crater, just a casual crater they walked by on the way to the supermarket. But how Oksana is processing life there is painting shell casings with Ukrainian symbols, Ukrainian folkloric motifs, and when in talking to her, she was telling me that she feels there's this wild sense of power that comes with, as Serhii says, touching these atrocious objects of death, of war, of destruction, and transforming them and making them beautiful and making them shine and emanate Ukrainian spirit. But because she's in eastern Ukraine, the first step was just getting her shells to western Ukraine. That's where Yaroslava came in. We shipped them to Yaroslava, and I won't go into all the details, but I will say those shells changed hands 5 times before they made it to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And that journey is a true testament to the community of Ukrainians in Ukraine and the Ukrainian diaspora in the United States and internationally, and how during this war, we're all coming together. In this case, we're all coming together because we were all so hopeful that you will see how Ukrainians are living through the war, how they're not just surviving, how they're creating, how they're transforming, how they're refusing to be negated in their identity.
So Serhii, you spoke about your Glory to the Sunflowers work, which is the large case on the left side of the gallery. Can you tell us a little bit about the symbolism of sunflower to yourself and to Ukraine?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to say my respect to all of your team because you made the fantastic exhibition, really. And when I yesterday just came to this hall and saw my sunflowers, I was amazed because really it's, sorry, I already told you. It's nothing, just simple things, but you made like a, how to say this, tomb with pharaoh. It looks like
Serhii
shiny.
was trying to convince me that the sunflowers on their own are totally not evocative and just like not worth a look. And when they're in a case is when they really are effective. And I respectfully disagree.
So yes, actually, Americans should say about sunflowers because sunflowers came to Europe in beginning of 16th century. It's national flower of America continent, not Ukrainian one. But in time, Ukraine became maybe, you know, the biggest producer of the sunflowers products, oil and maybe some seeds, yes. Because we have very rich soil in Ukraine. And I think it's not so deep and long history of sunflowering in Ukraine, maybe from 19th century. But this beautiful and wonderful flower became a symbol of Ukraine because it reminds people the feeling of everybody like a motherland. The sunflowers is a symbol of motherland because sunflowers goes to the sun around the day, and that's the same like people think about their land and trying to come back to their land, to their roots, something like this. But now, when the war started in Ukraine, the sunflower symbol got a new symbolic sense, It's in 2014, there was a sad story about some Ukrainian soldiers who should get out of the surrounding, how to say this? Encamping. And they made agreement with the Russian to get out from this. And they started to went to the field of sunflowers to escape this once again encamping. And during this action, Russian troops just shooting a lot of people. It was a tragedy. And in that time, the sunflower became a symbol of sadness and tragedy because there was a lot of picture of this field and
And shot down soldiers.
No, the sunflowers.
So shot down sunflowers?
Yes. Actually, our friend, this Yuri Virodov, he made a huge, maybe 7 meters sunflower sculpture with holes like a shot.
Bullet holes.
Yeah. And maybe I already told to Nina a story about the very brave woman in the beginning of the big war in 2022, when the Russians came in the eastern town, I don't remember, Denichsk, the name of the town, near the Azov Sea. And the woman came to this Russian soldier and suggest them, take please the sunflower seeds, put in the pocket. When you will be die here in this land, you get the
will be good fertilizer.
yes, and sunflowers rise from your body. So this is like became a symbol of our resistance. Yes.
Great, thank you. Yaroslava, can you tell us a little bit more about what would you hope that people would take from your painting in terms of the symbolism and in terms of it being a mixed media work as well? There's textile pieces, there's the metal work, all of these things. Is there a kind of a message or something that you would like people to take from your work?
No, you know, I'd like to interesting people of Ukrainian at all, but everyone can imagine, can feel something what is deeply important for everyone, because each of us have another way of watching, of feeling, of such things. That's why I think that everyone can feel their own feeling and emotions. So, and also remind, зрозуміти, згадати, understand Ukraine, or interesting about Ukraine, about what happened in my country, and so because really it was sorry, it was really important to have support all of you, because Ukraine is a small country and Russia is so big, and a lot of people here, and it's not just Putin makes this crime against Ukrainian nation. It's simple. Russian people come us and kill our children, kill our people, women. It's terrible, and that's why support is really important. In the first time when the war is started, I think, wow, it's really important that the people in the world, in Europe, in USA, don't forget about us, because you know, for people in news, we saw the same news day after day, day after day, and we are not interested. It's almost the same. We don't like it, but the war is go on. The people die, and it's not just in use in newspapers or newsline. You know, it's a real life, and so thank you, all of you, that you have not forget about us and have a support. It's really, really important. Thank you.
That's what Sasha told yesterday, really good determination of this process. We have now existential war in Ukraine, and this is like a struggle for democracy and also dictatorship, and you said the civilization and barbarism. Yes, it's
It was something that I think the whole team had at various times as we talked about the stress of putting this together so quickly. You kind of go into work mode. And there would be times that we would be talking or we'd be together working, and it would hit you that we were dealing with life and death, and people who are losing parents, losing spouses, losing children, and what a personal thing that is. And I know for Nina, this became a very personal thing as well, with being born in Ukraine, with family there. Is there one or two things that you would like to share with us that you would like people to take from this project, Nina?
Yeah, I think this exhibit, it can be interacted with on a variety of levels. But I do think that there's an inevitable doubling that occurs as you're moving through the gallery. You encounter a work of art, and perhaps initially it strikes you as beautiful and as impressive craftsmanship. But then you take a couple steps closer, or you spend a little bit more time with it, and you look at what it's made of. And you see that it's made of, as has been mentioned, tools of war, tools of death, tools of destruction. And there you are left, standing and having to reckon with this dance between fertility and death. And as people move through the exhibit, I really hope that they find a different way in to this conflict that we've been hearing so much about. I hope that it doesn't feel as anonymous to them. I hope that it becomes at least a little bit more personal, and I hope that they feel that maybe they even have a stake in this, that maybe there's a story of the artist that connects with them. In addition to the work itself, each of the objects, we give background on where they came from in Ukraine, on who made them. And hopefully these people will become symbols for you of Ukrainians and of the Ukrainian spirit that's manifesting itself as a spirit of resilience, as a spirit of transformation. And so when you leave the gallery, I hope you're left curious about perhaps how you can learn more about this war, curious about maybe how you can even get involved. There's so many ways to get involved, from helping refugees to helping civilians to helping people on the front lines. And if you're at all interested, get in touch with us. We will send you resources. There are plenty. But I also hope that you fall a little bit in love with Ukrainian tradition. I hope that blue and yellow takes on a new meaning for you. I hope that when you see the sky and a field of golden grass, you think of Ukraine. I hope you recognize the symbols out in the world from what you've seen in the gallery. I hope Ukraine doesn't feel so far away.